විම් දියර මිලිලීටර් 100 ස්මාර්ට් පැක් එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Friday the 3rd of March 2023. Stability. President Ranil Wickremesinghe is confident of positive results in the future from the stabilization measures taken by the government. Discussions were also held with the IMF Managing Director on the expected IMF facility. We are ready. Sri Lanka has fulfilled all necessary conditions for the IMF bailout package, says the central bank governor. LG polls. The Supreme Court issued an order preventing the withholding of funds allocated for the elections from the budget of 2023 to the Treasury Secretary and the Attorney General. Regulations removed. As the Sri Lankan rupee appreciates, central bank governor vows to remove guidance and forex surrender regulations on commercial banks from next week onwards.
Alliance Finance මෙතුරු රන්නයි සේවාවෙන් රන් පවුම්කට රුපියල් 1,70,000ක ඉහළ අධිකාරම.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. Your top story for tonight, the central bank governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe says that Sri Lanka has fulfilled all the necessary conditions for the IMF bailout package, adding that is hopeful of the go-ahead within this month. Addressing the monetary policy review today, the central bank governor said he's confident that the gap between the market interest rates and policy interest rates will come down in the future due to the measures implemented by the country's monetary authority. Further, the central bank chief once again reiterated the importance of enacting a new central bank act to ensure the independence of the monetary authority. Now, in the meantime, the standing deposit facility rate and the standing lending facility rate of the central bank were raised by 100 basis points by the Monetary Board with effect from today.
The Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka raised the standing deposit facility rate and the standing lending facility rate by 100 basis points to 15.5% and 16.5% respectively with effect from today. Addressing the Central Bank Monetary Policy Review today, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe explained Sri Lanka's way forward with the IMF bailout package.
We are now implemented all the prior actions and we are stand ready to adopt the IMF program. I think we hope that that will happen soon, hopefully within this month. And with that, we can move forward and make another good progress. In that process, IMF program outlook and also the exit striking process going forward. Going forward, the forward guidance on the interest rates. Although we have raised policy rates by 100 basis points today, what we expect, this gap between the policy rates and market rates, we would expect that gap should be reducing, and we would hope that there will be a convergence between the policy rates and the market rates going forward. And we think this market rates, the declining trend would continue for several reasons. First, basically, once you unlock the IMF program, there will be more foreign exchange flows coming in. Already we are seeing very good developments in the forex market in terms of liquidity and the exchange rate. That we hope will continue. That will help the disinflation process faster. And also once we move into the next step of deficit structuring, that will help us to reduce this uncertain premium further.
When are you going to start the loan repayment about the Bangladesh 200 and Indian swap?
Bangladesh one, I think September there's 200 million, I think we can pay it. Indian SU and others, we're not still negotiated the repayment plan, so we are in discussion with them. I think it will happen only after we start the IMF program and also clear the start debt restructuring negotiations. Then we will discuss that.
About the proposed central bank act, what is your thought about it?
We all know that this central bank independence is important factor for any country to succeed in economic development. As a historically proven fact. Even here, if you can see what our experience even last couple of years, with huge monetary expansion, what they call modern monetary theory, and reversing the inflation targeting regime, This is why we ended up in this situation. And all successful countries which has been able to control inflation, key element is the independent central bank. Whenever some countries there was no independent central bank, we are seeing hyperinflation. And obviously central banks should be independent for reasons. Because central banks' monetary policy decisions can't be popular decisions.
Is there any indication that we won't get financing assurances from China?
I think there's all basically reports say China is also willing to support Sri Lanka. That's between China and the IMF actually, so that probably they will work it out.
Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe says that he met with various organizations to discuss the strategies for boosting the economy and added that positive results can be expected due to measures taken by the government in the near future. Addressing a commissioning ceremony of the Sri Lanka Air Force Officers Cadet, the President said that a nation can become anarchic due to an economic collapse and urged everyone to prioritize safeguarding both the constitution and the economy.
The commissioning ceremony of the Air Force Office Cadets was held at the Trincomalee Air Force Base this morning under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. During the ceremony, 40 officer cadets were commissioned as officers of the Sri Lanka Air Force by the President.
ඔබේ මූලික යුතුකම ව්‍යවස්ථාව ආරක්ෂා කරන්නටත් රට ආරක්ෂා කරන්නටත්.
Your basic responsibility is to safeguard both the country and the constitution. Without a country, the constitution holds no value and is merely a useless piece of paper. A constitution functions when there is a country. As per the oath you took, it is imperative that you act with utmost loyalty towards the country, the constitution and the republic. The country's territorial integrity too needs to be protected. If we do not get together and the country divides, that is a threat to territorial integrity of the country. It is important to note that any changes to the government must be made through the proper channels such as a parliamentary election. The streets are not an option for the parliament. We must protect these institutions, especially the parliament. I would like to thank the armed forces for their role in protecting the parliament last June. When a parliament is not safeguarded, chaos and anarchy can quickly ensue. Today, we are facing another issue, which is the economic crisis. There will be no country if the economy collapses. In recent days, I have met with various organizations to discuss strategies for boosting the economy.
මම සාකච්ඡා කීපයකුත් වෙනත් සංවිධානත් සාකච්ඡා පවත්වලා තියෙනවා.
Now, meanwhile, President Ranil Wickremesinghe and the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, discussed the expected IMF financial facility to Sri Lanka and the island nation's expected debt restructuring. The discussions that were held virtually between both parties last evening have also discussed the prevailing sense of optimism among all stakeholders involved in Sri Lanka's debt restructuring and financial facility. The President's Media Division noted that the IMF Managing Director has held this discussion following the consideration of the recent discussion with Chinese Prime Minister Li Keqiang. Meanwhile, the Election Commission convened early today to decide on a new date for the 2023 local government election. Considering the decision given by the Supreme Court, if it was decided at the meeting to declare the new date for the local government election on the 9th of March 2023. Releasing a statement, the Director General of the Election Commission, Saman Sri Ratnayaka, claimed that the dates for discussion with the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Head of Government Press, the police and other state officials will be released soon. Now, the Supreme Court issued an order today preventing the withholding of funds allocated for the elections from Budget 2023 to the Treasury Secretary and the Attorney General. The three-member Supreme Court bench gave this order while taking up a fundamental rights petition filed by the General Secretary of the main opposition, Samgi Janabalawegaya Ranjith Madum Bandara, for the hearing.
The writ application filed by the General Secretary of the Samagi Janabalawegaya Ranjith Madum Bandara, stating that the respondents of the petition, including Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, have violated the fundamental rights of the people by failing to release funds for the Election Commission for the holding of the local government polls, was taken up before the three-member Supreme Court judge bench comprising Justices Preeti Padman Surasena, Janaka De Silva and Priyantha Fernando. Appearing on behalf of the SJB General Secretary, President's Counsel Upul Jayasuriya said the state institutions, including the Ministry of Finance, the Department of Government Printing and the Inspector General of the Police, are bound to support the Election Commission in holding free and fair elections as per the Constitution. He also said that the state officials have no ability to refuse the provision of funds to the Election Commission since they have already been allocated. President's Counsel Upul Jayasuriya also pointed out that the local government election has no relation to the dollar crisis and added that the non-provision of funds for the election is a hit to the country's democracy. However, Additional Solicitor General Priyantha Navana, who appeared on behalf of the Attorney General, said the government has no intention of violating the fundamental rights or democracy of the people and denied the allegations levelled by the petitioners that the Treasury Secretary intentionally halted the provision of funds for the election. He also said the Treasury Secretary participated in the meetings pertaining to the election at the Election Commission and took steps to provide 40 billion rupees to the Department of Government Printing and 25 billion rupees to the Sri Lanka Police out of the 100 billion rupee amount requested by the Commission. The attorney for the Attorney General also said the Cabinet decided to limit the state expenses, taking the current economic situation into account. Further, he said that the economic situation of the country was briefed to the Commission by the Treasury Secretary prior to the calling of nominations and added that the Commission had time to decide whether the election can be held or not. He also noted that the hearing of the petition cannot continue since it failed to name the Election Commission as a respondent even though they had made the Commission members as respondents. Appearing on behalf of the Election Commission, President's Counsel Saleh Piris said the Treasury Secretary has stated that the funds cannot be released for the election since it has not been categorized as an essential expenditure. He then said that the right to decide whether it is necessary to hold the election or not does not lie with the Treasury Secretary. Considering the facts, the judge bench issued an order preventing withholding of funds allocated for the election from the budget of 2023 to the Treasury Secretary and the Attorney General. The case will be taken up again before the Supreme Court on the 26th of May.
And we'll be back with more news right after this short commercial break. Welcome back. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, President's Counsel Ali Sabri, says that the lack of clear policy and low investment are preventing the spread of digitalization and the access to technology across Sri Lanka. Addressing the plenary panel discussion on the theme Bites of Promise, How Can Technology Lift Communities? At the Raisina Dialogue 2023 in India, the Sri Lankan Foreign Minister said that Sri Lanka has a great potential towards digitalization despite the existing challenges.
The problems that we have in Sri Lanka as far as concerned, we have universal free education there. With that, there is good education prospect, but the amount of investment and a clear policy, consistent policy, lack of policy is a problem for us. Then of course educating our young kids with the skills and upskills of this is a challenge for us, and the technology, the access to the technology and kind of affordability of it is a problem in terms of internet penetration, as well as the charges which have been levied on that, and also the devices. So these are challenges that we have, but more or less the challenges are going to be consistent government policy, political will on top, and then follow-up action and continuous learning and continuous improvement. These are challenges which we have to overtake. Comparatively, we have made a lot of progress during the pandemic because it forced kind of thing. You call it as that necessity is the mother of all inventions, and that actually happened in Sri Lanka, but long way to go. So the challenges remain and the potential are enormous. So we probably have to look at it, and the leaders and the politicians and the governments need to invest on that and invest consistent. And I also say something, it is time that given the enormous potential which is available there, something like a WHO kind of thing where our health services are very, very good, where they come and look at all our thing, and we have managed almost on par with developed countries. For this, you need to have an international organization looking at digitalization, looking at every aspect of it in terms of investment, in terms of training, in terms of policies and all those things, so that you really give that opportunity for everybody across the world.
Now, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe has stated that from next week onwards, key regulations imposed by the central bank will be removed as the forex market improves its position, while also highlighting the central bank's commitment towards more flexible exchange rate regimes. His comments came as the Sri Lankan rupee further appreciated against the dollar today. Meanwhile, speaking to AdaDerana, Dimantha Matthew of First Capital Holdings highlighted that the easing of regulations by the central bank, along with several other key recent developments, supported the rise of the rupee.
The Sri Lankan rupee appreciated further against the US dollar today as the buying rate reached 334 rupees and 50 cents and the selling rate recorded 348 rupees and 3 cents. At the same time, the middle rate of the USD LKR spot exchange rate was recorded at 346 rupees and 17 cents. The Sri Lankan rupee on Wednesday marked a record high against the US dollar, with the buying and selling rates dropping to 351 rupees and 72 cents and 362 rupees and 95 cents respectively. According to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, this was the lowest rupee value against the US dollar since the 4th of May 2022. Today's rupee appreciation followed similar movements against the US dollar yesterday, with the buying and selling rates reaching 343 rupees and 97 cents and 356 rupees and 73 cents respectively. Meanwhile, releasing the external sector report for January 2023 recently, the central bank pointed out that the gross official reserves of Sri Lanka stood at $2.1 billion as at the end of January 2023. The central bank further highlighted in the report that during the year up to the 28th of February 2023, the rupee recorded an appreciation of 0.4% against the US dollar. Following these developments, speaking at today's Monetary Policy Review, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe elaborated on the commitment of the central bank to move towards a flexible exchange rate regime as the country's financial crisis eases.
We have seen a gradual improvement in the forex liquidity in the banking sector. This is where we thought we will relax forex section. This now situation has improved. We have been very careful also to curtail the too much volatility. Our interventions have helped to minimize volatility. The last 5 days of this week, we have purchased $308 million from the market. And if we did not purchase this amount of aggressive intervention, rate would have been crashed. Now it's stable. I think going forward with our inflation targeting regime, our commitment to flexible exchange rate regime, when situation is better and when there's a deepened foreign exchange market which can absorb shocks and which can reflect the demand and supply with a lot more liquidity, I think let the market to determine the exchange rate going forward. This is why I think we are going to announce today guidance of the even 10 rupee will be removed from next Monday. There will be no guidance. And second part, we'll announce there will be no mandatory purchase by the central bank from next week onwards. Monday holiday. This will be from Tuesday. Tuesday we'll be buying what was collected under mandatory purchases 15%. After that, we certainly will be intervening, and whenever there's opportunity, we'll buy to build up and also to stabilize the volatile movements. But still, it will be mostly market-driven exchange rate regime. This week, 308 million purchase means we have injected 108 billion rupees into the money market. That also has helped to stabilize the deficit situation, and that will also help to stabilize the market interest rates as we and continue the trend of market interest rates moving in the same direction going forward. So that this is, I think, a recent development. Obviously, the exchange rate pass-through transmission will take some time, but can see immediately there will be some impact through petroleum prices, because when there's a cost-effective pricing formulas, any benefit that can come through exchange rate appreciation should definitely be passed to the consumer.
Meanwhile, speaking to AdaDerana English News, Dimantha Matthew of First Capital Holdings highlighted several other reasons behind the appreciation of the rupee.
We saw the central bank cut down on the requirement for commercial banks to surrender export proceeds and worker remittances. So basically, it was earlier 25% and currently brought down to 15%. That has increased the liquidity in the forex market. And in addition to that, we saw the IFC also getting into the act with a USD 400 million trade financing swap awarded to Commercial Bank, NTB, and Sampath Bank in order to facilitate importation of essential items, which will also help to boost the forex liquidity in the system. In addition to that, there are some other factors also that made the background to this appreciation. We saw significant inflows coming into the government securities market to the tune of 7 billion rupees over the last 2 months. Also, we saw foreign inflows come into the stock market year to date around 3.3 billion rupees. And also on the trade deficit side of it, we saw the trade deficit halve in the month of January. All these factors are supporting the balance of payments, which recorded a surplus of $211 million in the month of January.
Now let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. Now, the all share price index closed in green at 9,444.92 as a result of price gains in counters such as Valuable One, Commercial Bank and Sampan Bank, with the turnover crossing 2.9 billion rupees. Similar behavior was witnessed in the S&P SL20 as it ended at the day closing at 2,838.18. Crossings were witnessed in Sampan Bank, John Keel's Holdings and Lanka IOC, accounting for 43.2% of the turnover. Mixed interest was observed in Expo Lanka Holdings, Hemas Holdings and Capital Alliance, whilst retail interest was noted in Cooperative Insurance Company, Brown's Investments and Distilleries. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers. During the week, the SPI and the S&P SL20 gained 1.4% and 0.2% respectively, whilst recording an average daily turn of 1.64 billion rupees. The banking sector was the top contributor to the market turnover as the sector index gained 3.8%. Capital goods sector was the second highest contributor to the market turnover as the sector increased by 0.82%. Now, Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang states that China has suspended more debt than another creditor nation while participating in debt roundtable discussions. Speaking further, he criticized multilateral financial institutions for not accepting losses or haircuts as many developing debtor nations face financial meltdowns. The Chinese Foreign Minister's remarks follow several allegations by US authorities that China stalls debt restructuring efforts in the developing world.
Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang called on global financial institutions yesterday to play an active role in restructuring the debt of developing countries. He made these remarks at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in New Delhi, India. China, the world's largest bilateral creditor, has criticized multilateral lenders for not accepting losses or haircuts on loans to low-income countries, while Beijing is being asked to do so on credit it has extended on its own. During the gathering of foreign ministers from the group of 20 leading economies, King said China hopes that multilateral financial institutions and commercial creditors will be actively involved in the debt treatment for developing countries. The Chinese foreign minister's remarks come as cabinet spokesperson Dr. Bandulu Gunawardena recently said that the cabinet approved $2.6 billion in loan repayments to be made within the first 6 months of this year.
We never stopped the repayment of multilateral debt. Which debt have we stopped paying? Bilateral debt. Debt obtained by issuing bonds. That is what we have defaulted on. Every day we pay this amount by printing money and obtaining debt.
The G20 set up a common framework in late 2020 to offer relief to low-income countries facing mounting pressures resulting from COVID-19 and tightening global financial conditions amid the Ukraine war. Furthermore, China's Foreign Minister King stated that China has put forth relevant initiatives under the G20 and highlighted that China has suspended more debt service payments than any other G20 member while participating in the debt treatment under the common framework. The United States has repeatedly criticized China over what it considers to be foot-dragging on debt relief for dozens of low- and middle-income countries, including Sri Lanka. Last week, China urged G20 nations to conduct a fair, objective and in-depth analysis of the causes of global debt issues and to resolve the problem in a comprehensive and effective manner.
And that's all the news we have for this evening. Join us again tomorrow for the very latest news at the very same time. Tune into our social media pages to stay updated on the latest news. Have a pleasant evening and good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.